The light of alien suns filtered through the grand viewports of the cerulean citadel, casting prismatic patterns across the faces of the Nine. They sat motionless upon their crystalline thrones, arranged in a perfect circle within the Grand Hall, the Coalition's ruling synod, masters of 1,000 worlds, frozen in the posture of contemplation. Their stillness was ritual, their silent ceremony. For centuries, this deliberate immobility had symbolized their steadfast governance, unwavering, unchanging, eternal. Prime Elder Zorath, eldest of the Nine, finally stirred. His scaled fingers tapped a rhythm on the armrest of his throne, the sound echoing in the cavernous chamber. "The humans have breached the Noveris outpost," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of ages. 300 Coalition soldiers dead, 17 noble families exterminated. The word hung in the air, unprecedented in their councils. The Coalition of Nine had not faced a genuine military threat in generations. Peace through subjugation, benevolent control, this had been their way. Their dominion expanded through diplomatic coercion and the occasional show of overwhelming force. But extermination? This was something else entirely. Synod member. Valia rose from her throne, her luminescent skin pulsing with agitation. "This cannot stand. We must crush this human insurgency immediately." Her voice rose to a shrill pitch. "Send the 7th Fleet to their colonies. Mars first. Then—" "No!" Zorath cut her off with a gesture. "The humans have changed their tactics. They strike and vanish. They leave messages in the ruins. They call it justice, not war." On the holographic display at the center of the chamber, images materialized, burned outposts, Coalition banners in flames, and always the same message projected onto the wreckage: no mercy for the merciless. "They seek vengeance for the Martian settlement," whispered Synod member Kelris, the youngest of the Nine. "For an attack we did not authorize." Silence fell again. None would speak the truth aloud, that some faction within their sprawling bureaucracy had acted without Synod approval, had struck a human settlement without warning or declaration. A settlement where 10,000 civilians had perished, including the brother of their most formidable opponent. "Colonel Mara Voss leads them now," Zorath continued, his ancient eyes narrowing. "The same Mara Voss who once sat in this chamber as Earth's ambassador, who negotiated the treaties we now enforce." The Prime Elder's fingers ceased their tapping. For the first time in living memory, something akin to fear crept into his voice. "And she has sworn to make us pay." The Star Cruiser Aegis cut through the darkness of space, its sleek hull bearing the scars of recent battles. On the command deck, Colonel Mara Voss stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the starfield through the viewport. At 42, she carried herself with the rigid posture of someone who had spent half a lifetime in diplomatic chambers before trading negotiations for military command. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe knot, revealing the augmentation scar that ran from temple to jaw, a relic of the neural implants that had once facilitated her translation of a dozen alien languages. Now those implants served a different purpose: tactical calculations, threat assessments, kill probabilities. "Approaching Titan outpost, Colonel," announced her navigation officer. "Refugee ship still incoming." Mara nodded without turning. "Direct them to the secondary docking bays. Priority medical cases to Facility 3. She felt rather than saw Captain Elias Trent approach. He'd been with her since the beginning, since the day the news had reached them about Mars. "The High Command transmission is waiting," he said quietly. "They're asking about our next move." Mara finally turned from the viewport. At 6'4", Trent towered over her, his weathered face a map of concern. They had served together for 7 years, first as peacekeepers, now as something else entirely. "Tell them I'll be there shortly." Her quarters were Spartan, functional, the chamber of someone who expected to leave at a moment's notice. The only personal touch was a small, holographic projector on her desk. Mara activated it before accepting the transmission, allowing the image to form. Her brother Samuel, laughing, his arm around his wife, their daughter perched on his shoulders. The Martian sunset behind them cast them in a red glow. All ash now, all of them. The projection faded as the communication screen activated. The stern faces of human high command appeared. 5 generals representing Earth and the colonies, their expressions grim. "Colonel Voss," began General Ibrahim, her former mentor. "The coalition has sent another diplomatic overture. They claim to have identified the rogue elements responsible for the Martian attack and are offering reparations." Mara's face remained impassive. "The same offer they made last month, and the month before. They've increased the terms," another general interjected. "Full withdrawal from the Jupiter moons. Recognition of human sovereignty over—" "No." Mara's voice was quiet but sliced through the conversation like a blade. "We tried negotiation, for years. I sat in their halls, watching them nod and smile while they positioned fleets above our worlds. They understand only one language now." She leaned forward, her palms flat against the desk. "The Novaris raid was successful. We've shown them they're not untouchable. Vanguard Unit Omega is assembled and ready. I'm proceeding with Operation Retribution." A heavy silence fell across the channel. "That's a direct strike at the heart of their power," said General Ibrahim carefully. "The Cerulean Citadel has never been breached. If you succeed—" "When we succeed," Mara corrected, "the diplomatic consequences will be irreversible." Mara's gaze hardened. "Diplomacy died with my brother and 10,000 others on Mars. The coalition needs to understand what fear feels like." She straightened. "Unless my orders have changed?" The generals exchanged glances. Finally, Ibrahim spoke again. "Your authorization stands, Colonel. May God have mercy on us all." The transmission ended. Mara remained motionless for a long moment before reactivating the hologram of her family. Samuel's face, forever frozen in laughter, seemed to ask a question she couldn't answer. "No mercy," she whispered to the empty room. "No mercy for the merciless." Lieutenant Nayara Sol moved through the Titan training facility like a ghost, her slender frame belying the deadliness of her skills. At 26, she was the youngest member of Vanguard Unit Omega, and the most lethal at a distance. Her sniper certifications were unmatched in the human forces, a talent that had claimed 37 coalition officers in the past 6 months. She found Captain Trent in the command center, reviewing tactical displays of the Cerulean Citadel. "Is it true?" she asked without preamble. "We're going for the heart?" Trent didn't look up from the displays. "Colonel's orders. Full briefing in 1 hour." Nayara's dark eyes narrowed. "The Citadel is a fortress. Even with our stealth tech, the approach alone—" "Is suicide?" Trent finally looked up, his expression unreadable. "Probably, but we're going anyway." She studied him for a moment. "You don't agree with this?" It wasn't a question. Everyone in Vanguard Omega knew Trent had been pushing for a more measured approach, targeted strikes against military installations, not the coalition's seat of power itself. "What I agree with doesn't matter," he replied evenly. "What matters is that every person in this unit understands what we're about to attempt." He gestured to the display. "The Citadel houses the 9. Yes, but also thousands of administrative staff, diplomatic envoys from neutral systems, even civilian families of high-ranking officials." Nayara's jaw tightened. "Like the civilians on Mars." Trent's eyes met hers. "Exactly like Mars. That's what I'm afraid of, that we become what we're fighting against." Before she could respond, the facility's communication system chimed. "Incoming transmission from the Neutral Accord," announced the automated voice. "Ambassador Rion Creus requests immediate audience with Colonel Voss." Trent sighed. The last diplomat in the galaxy who still thinks he can talk us out of this. Should we wake the Colonel? No need. Mara's voice came from the doorway as she entered, still in her full uniform despite the late hour. I'll take it here. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the distinctive features of Ambassador Cryas, tall and willowy, like all members of the accordant species, with iridescent skin that shifted colors with his emotions. Currently, it pulsed a troubled indigo. Colonel Voss, he began, his melodic voice tight with restraint. I've just received word of your operation at Novaris. The Neutral Accord formally protests this escalation. Mara's expression remained neutral. Noted, Ambassador. Was there something else? Cryas leaned forward, his skin darkening further. You know very well there is. Rumors of your next target have reached even our isolated systems. The Cerulean Citadel is not merely a military installation. It is the cultural and political center of half the galaxy. It is the seat of power for those who murdered my brother and thousands like him. Mara replied coldly. The Coalition Synod has disavowed that attack repeatedly. Cryas insisted. They've offered reparations, territorial concessions. Words. Mara cut him off. Empty words while they rebuild their border fleets and fortify positions near our colonies. She stepped closer to the screen. You were there, Ambassador, 3 years ago, when I begged the Synod to honor the Jupiter Accords. You saw how they smiled and promised peace while their ships moved into position. Cryas's color shifted to a pale blue. I remember, but this path leads only to more suffering. The Neutral Accord is prepared to host new peace talks, with guarantees. The time for talk is over. Mara's voice was soft now, almost gentle. But I appreciate your concern, Ambassador. It reminds me that not all non-humans are our enemies. Colonel, Cryas hesitated, then spoke with sudden urgency. My sources indicate the Coalition is paralyzed with indecision. For the first time in centuries, the Synod cannot agree on a course of action. Some advocate crushing your forces immediately. Others fear any large-scale move will trigger human attacks on their homeworlds. They are frozen. Mara, frozen in fear. A cold smile touched Mara's lips. Good. Then they finally understand how we felt, watching their ships above our worlds, never knowing when they would strike. She straightened. I have a briefing to attend. Ambassador, please convey my regards to the Accord. As the transmission ended, Trent gave her a sidelong glance. He's not wrong about the civilian presence. Neither am I about Mars. Mara turned to the tactical display. Gather the unit. It's time they understood exactly what we're about to do. The briefing room of the Aegis fell silent as Mara activated the holographic projection of the Cerulean Citadel. The structure materialized in ghostly blue light, a sprawling complex of crystalline spires and fortified chambers, suspended on an artificial platform above the gas giant Azuria. For millennia, it had stood as the unassailable center of Coalition power, its defenses legendary, its inner sanctums unreachable by any unauthorized beings. Until now, 20 faces watched intently as Mara outlined the mission. The 12 soldiers of Vanguard Unit Omega, Captain Trent, Lieutenant Saul, and 5 specialized combat engineers. Each person in the room had been personally selected by Mara, and each carried their own reasons for being there. Some had lost family in Coalition attacks. Others had spent years in Coalition detention facilities. All had sworn allegiance to Operation Retribution. The approach will utilize the new quantum stealth drives, Mara explained, highlighting the planned trajectory. We'll penetrate through the service access tunnels here, using Coalition identification codes provided by our intelligence network. The hologram shifted to show the interior layout. Our primary target is the Grand Hall, the meeting chamber of the Synod. Mara's voice remained clinically detached. Engineer Patel's team will plant atomic compression charges at these key structural points, while Vanguard Omega secures our exit route. A hand raised. Sergeant Coda, a veteran of the Mars Defense Force. Colonel, the Grand Hall is where they keep the Eternal Record, isn't it? The complete historical and cultural archive of Coalition civilization. Mara nodded once. It is. And we're going to destroy it? Coda pressed, his expression unreadable. We're going to destroy everything, Mara confirmed, her eyes sweeping the room. The chambers, the archives, the thrones from which they've dictated terms to 100 species. By the time we're finished, the Coalition of 9 will be leaderless, their seat of power a memory. Lieutenant Saul leaned forward. And the people inside? Mara held her gaze. We'll broadcast a warning 15 minutes before detonation. Enough time for evacuation to begin. Not enough time to complete it. Some will survive. Some won't. Her voice hardened. Just like Mars. A heavy silence fell across the room. This isn't just another raid, Captain Trent said finally, addressing the team. This is the point of no return. Every one of you needs to understand that. After this, there's no going back to treaties and negotiations. We'll have changed the course of human history, and galactic history, forever. Engineer Patel, a compact woman with steady hands and calculating eyes, studied the structural schematics with professional detachment. The charges will need to be precisely placed. The Citadel's supporting architecture uses crystalline lattice technology we've never encountered before. Can you do it? Mara asked simply. Patel nodded. Give me 20 minutes inside, and I'll bring down millennia of Coalition arrogance. Good, Mara straightened, surveying the faces before her. We depart in 6 hours. The operation begins at 0400 Standard Time. Get what rest you can. As the briefing dispersed, Captain Trent remained behind, his tall frame silhouetted against the still glowing hologram of their target. You should know, he said quietly, when they were alone. There's dissent brewing on Titan. Protests outside the refugee centers. Some are saying we've gone too far, that we're becoming what we claim to hate. Mara's expression didn't change. And what do you think, Elias? Trent hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I think the Coalition needed to be shown they couldn't attack us without consequences. I think the raids on military targets were justified. He gestured toward the holographic citadel. But this isn't justice, Mara. This is annihilation. It's both, she replied, her voice suddenly weary. The Coalition understands only absolute power. As long as the Synod exists, they'll never see us as equals, only as a threat to be managed or eliminated. She turned to face him fully. You've seen the intelligence reports. They're already rebuilding their strike fleets. So we keep hitting military targets, Trent insisted. We force them to the negotiating table from a position of strength. We tried negotiation. For the first time, Mara's composure cracked, raw pain bleeding through. For years, I smiled and nodded and compromised while they moved their pieces into position. I trusted their words, their treaties. My brother trusted them. She drew a sharp breath, regaining control. Never again. Trent stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mara, Samuel wouldn't want this. Her eyes flashed dangerously. Don't you dare presume to speak for my brother. I'm not, he said gently. I'm speaking for the man I knew. The scientist who believed different species could find common ground, who invited Coalition scholars to his research facility on Mars because he believed in cooperation. Mara turned away, her shoulders rigid. That man died in fire with his wife and daughter, and the Coalition taught me what happens to those who believe in peace. She shut down the hologram with a sharp gesture. Get some rest, Captain. You'll need it. Left alone in the darkened briefing room, Mara finally allowed herself a moment of doubt. Not about the mission. That decision was made. But about what would come after. In destroying the Coalition's heart. What would humanity become? Rulers through fear. just as the Nine had been. She pushed the thought away. There would be time for philosophical questions after justice had been served. Ambassador Rayon Creus paced the confines of his private chambers aboard the neutral Accord vessel Harmony. His skin had settled into a troubled gray-green, reflecting the conflict raging within. For decades, he had dedicated himself to maintaining balance between the coalition and the emerging human powers. He had believed in the possibility of peaceful coexistence, had staked his reputation on it. Now he watched it all unraveling before his eyes. His communication console chimed softly. Incoming transmission from the Cerulean Citadel. Ambassador, priority channel. Creus straightened, composing himself. Except, the face that appeared was familiar. Prime Elder Zorath. His ancient features arranged in their customary expression of benevolent superiority. But something was different now. The Elder's scaled eyelids blinked more rapidly than usual, and his ceremonial collar seemed to constrict his throat. Ambassador, Zorath began, his voice carefully modulated. The Synod hopes this message finds you well. Spare me the formalities. Elder, Creus replied. I've just spoken with Colonel Voss. The humans are planning something catastrophic. Zorath's composure slipped momentarily. You've had contact? What did she say? Nothing specific, but my sources within human space confirm they're mobilizing for a major operation. Creus leaned closer to the screen. Elder, you must act now. Make real concessions. Withdraw your forces from the Jupiter moons. Offer genuine autonomy to the human colonies. Out of the question, Zorath snapped, then visibly reined himself in. The coalition cannot appear weak. Already, vassal worlds whisper of rebellion, watching how these humans defy us without consequence. Without consequence? Creus's skin flushed red with indignation. They lost 10,000 lives on Mars. Their colonies live under constant threat of annihilation. An unfortunate incident, Zorath murmured. As we have repeatedly explained, rogue elements within our security apparatus acted without Synod approval. Then punish those responsible publicly. Creus pressed. Show the humans you're serious about justice. Zorath's gaze shifted away. Matters of internal discipline are not for public display. Understanding dawned on Creus. You can't, can you? Because it wasn't rogue elements. Someone powerful authorized that strike. Someone you can't afford to sacrifice. The Elder's silence was confirmation enough. Then, you've doomed us all, Creus said softly. Colonel Voss isn't just fighting for revenge. Elder. She's fighting because she believes the coalition cannot be trusted to keep peace. And with every evasion, every half-truth, you prove her right. Zorath's ancient eyes narrowed. You forget yourself, Ambassador. The coalition has maintained galactic stability for millennia. These humans are but the latest species to rebel against necessary order. They will be contained, as all others have been. I'm not so certain, Creus replied. I've studied human history. When threatened, they unite with remarkable ferocity, and they have a capacity for violence that exceeds even the shriven hordes of the Outer Rim. You sound as though you admire them, Zorath observed coldly. I fear them, Creus corrected. As should you. Make peace while you still can. Elder. Real peace. Not the illusion of control you've maintained over other species. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Creus alone with his troubled thoughts. He moved to the viewport, gazing out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Mara Voss was preparing to change the galaxy forever, and he had failed to stop her. His aide entered quietly. Ambassador, the Accord Council is requesting updates on your mediation efforts. Creus didn't turn from the viewport. Tell them to prepare for refugees. Many refugees. The approach to the Cerulean Citadel was silent, ethereal. The quantum stealth technology that enveloped the human assault craft bent light and sensor readings around them, rendering them virtually invisible to Coalition detection systems. Through the viewport, Mara watched the citadel grow larger, a shimmering construct of crystal and light, its spires reaching toward the stars like accusatory fingers. In the cargo bay behind her, Vanguard Unit Omega performed final equipment checks with practiced precision. Their powered combat suits were matte black, designed for both stealth and enhanced strength. Each soldier carried a customized arsenal, kinetic weapons that wouldn't trigger the Citadel's energy discharge alarms, explosive charges, and ceramic blades for silent eliminations. "Final approach," announced the pilot, her voice tense with concentration. "Service dock, designate C-17 in sight. No detection alerts." Mara moved to the tactical station where Lieutenant Saul monitored the Citadel's security channels. "Any unusual activity?" Saul shook her head, dark hair falling across her face. "Standard patrol patterns. The diplomatic reception in the Eastern Wing is proceeding as scheduled." She looked up, her expression troubled. "Delegations from 17 neutral systems are present. They made their choice when they accepted Coalition hospitality," Mara replied, though a flicker of discomfort crossed her features. She activated the ship-wide communication system. "All units, prepare for infiltration. Phase 1 commences in 3 minutes." Captain Trent approached, his tall frame already encased in combat armor. Only his face remained exposed, his expression grave. "We're ready," he reported. "Engineer Patel has programmed the charges for maximum structural damage." Mara nodded. "Good. You know your role. Secure our exit route and ensure the evacuation warning is broadcast exactly 12 minutes after we breach the Grand Hall." 12 minutes, Trent repeated, "not the 15 you told the team." Their eyes met in silent understanding. Mara had reduced the warning time without informing the unit, ensuring maximum casualties among the Coalition leadership, while maintaining the pretense of humanitarian concern. 12 minutes, she confirmed quietly. "That's an order, Captain." A muscle twitched in Trent's jaw, but he nodded. "Understood, Colonel." The assault craft docked with whisper-quiet precision, magnetic clamps engaging against the service tunnel's exterior. Within moments, Vanguard Omega was moving through the maintenance corridors of the Citadel, their progress monitored via secure channels by the Aegis command crew. The first Coalition security team they encountered never had a chance to raise an alarm. Lieutenant Saul's silenced weapon dropped 2 guards with precision headshots. Sergeant Coda dispatched the third with a ceramic blade across the throat. They moved past the bodies without pause, following the memorized path toward the Citadel's heart. "Central security hub ahead," Mara murmured into her comm unit. "Engineer Patel, you're up." The compact woman slipped forward, her fingers dancing across a portable interface linked to the Citadel's systems. Coalition security architecture was legendary, but Patel had spent years studying its vulnerabilities. "Bypassing primary alarms," she whispered. "Looping surveillance feeds. Now." The door slid open, revealing 4 Coalition security officers hunched over monitoring stations. They looked up in confusion. Their screens showed empty corridors, not the armed humans now filling their doorway. The firefight was brief and utterly one-sided. "Hub secured," reported Sergeant Coda, stepping over the fallen officers. "Access to central systems acquired." Patel moved immediately to the main terminal, her fingers flying across alien interfaces. "I can give us control of internal doors and elevators, but the Grand Hall has independent security. We'll need to breach it physically." "As planned," Mara confirmed. She turned to the team. "Phase 2. Captain Trent, take Alpha Squad and secure the evacuation route. Lieutenant Saul, you're with me and Beta Squad for the Grand Hall breach." The team split, moving with practiced efficiency through the now accessible corridors. Occasionally, they encountered Citadel staff or security personnel. None survived to sound alarms. The deeper they penetrated, the more ornate their surroundings became. Luminescent crystal formations lined the walls, pulsing gently with what seemed like a living rhythm. "It's beautiful," murmured one of the soldiers, his voice tinged with reluctant awe. "So was Mars," Mara replied coldly, "before they burned it." They reached the antechamber to the Grand Hall without major resistance, a testament to both their planning and the Coalition's complacency. Centuries of unchallenged rule had led to overconfidence, to a belief in their own invulnerability. Today, that belief would die along with the Synod. "Charges ready," reported Engineer Patel, kneeling before the massive doors that sealed the Grand Hall. "This will not be subtle, Colonel." "It doesn't need to be," Mara replied. "From this point forward, speed is our ally." She opened a channel to Trent. "Captain, status?" His voice came through with slight static. "Evacuation route secured. Eastern corridor locked down in place." "Broadcast system?" "Under our control. Ready on your mark?" Mara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment, the culmination of months of planning, years of grief and rage. Execute breach. The explosion rocked the antechamber, the crystal doors disintegrating into thousands of glittering shards. Through the smoke and debris, Vanguard Omega surged forward, weapons raised, into the legendary Grand Hall of the Coalition of Nine. The scene that greeted them was one of stunned disbelief. The circular chamber, vast and cathedral-like, was dominated by 9 crystalline thrones arranged around a central dais. Upon those thrones sat the Synod members, their varied physiologies united by expressions of utter shock. Around them stood advisors, guards, and administrative officials, all frozen in place at the unprecedented violation of their sanctum. "Coalition leaders." Mara's voice rang out, amplified by her suit systems. "You stand accused of crimes against humanity, of unprovoked attack against civilian targets, of violation of treaty agreements, of murder." She stepped forward, removing her helmet to reveal her face, known to many of them from her years as Earth's ambassador. Prime Elder Zorath rose slowly from his throne, his ancient frame trembling not with age, but with rage. "Mara Voss," he hissed, "you dare breach the sacred hall? You will not leave this place alive." "Neither will you," she replied simply, nodding to Engineer Patel. The team moved with ruthless efficiency, placing charges at key structural points while keeping the Coalition officials at gunpoint. Guards who attempted resistance were cut down immediately. The message was clear: cooperation meant survival, at least for the next few minutes. "Colonel," Patel called from beneath the central dais. "Charges planted, awaiting final authorization." Mara turned to Lieutenant Saul. "Signal Captain Trent. Begin the evacuation broadcast." Saul nodded, activating her comm unit. Moments later, alarms began to wail throughout the Citadel, and an automated voice, speaking the common galactic language, announced, "Emergency evacuation protocol initiated. This is not a drill. All personnel proceed to designated evacuation points immediately." Chaos erupted in the chamber as officials and attendants pushed toward the exits. Only the 9 remained seated, their posture rigid with dignity, or perhaps with the paralysis of disbelief. Mara approached Prime Elder Zorath directly, standing before his throne. For a moment, they regarded each other in silence, the human colonel and the ancient alien ruler, representatives of worlds in collision. "Do you know why I'm here?" Mara asked, her voice pitched for his ears alone. "Revenge," Zorath replied dismissively. "A primitive emotion." "Justice," she corrected. "For my brother, for Mars, for every human who died because the mighty Coalition decided we needed to be taught our place." Zorath's scaled face contorted in what might have been a smile. "And what place will humans occupy after this? Do you imagine the galaxy will simply bow to your species because you've struck at us? There are 1,000 worlds in our domain. Colonel, they will unite against this barbarism." "Perhaps," Mara acknowledged. "Or perhaps they'll realize that freedom from Coalition control is finally possible." She stepped closer. You ruled through fear. Elder. Made examples of those who defied you. Now we're making an example of you." The elder's ancient eyes narrowed. "Who authorized the attack on your brother's settlement? Is that what you want to know before you kill me? The truth?" For an instant, Mara's composure wavered. "You admit it wasn't rogue elements." "The decision was complicated," Zorath said carefully. "There were factions within the Synod who believed humanity's expansion needed to be checked. Your brother's research facility was developing technologies that could have threatened coalition dominance." "Atmospheric terraforming," Mara whispered. "He was trying to make Mars more habitable." "Technology that could be weaponized," Zorath countered. "The same systems that create atmosphere can strip it away." Mara's hand moved to her sidearm. "Who gave the order?" The elder's gaze didn't waver. "I did." The confession hung between them, stark and damning. Before Mara could respond, her comm unit crackled. "Colonel," Trent's voice came through urgently. "We have a problem. Coalition reinforcements inbound. At least 3 cruisers breaking orbit. Our window is closing fast." Mara kept her eyes locked on Zorath. "Time to charges?" 8 minutes, Patel reported from across the chamber. "Begin withdrawal," Mara ordered. "All units fall back to extraction point. Lieutenant Saul, with me." Around them, the Grand Hall was emptying as panic spread. Coalition officials fled toward evacuation points, heedless of rank or protocol. Only the 9 remained, dignity intact even in defeat. "You won't make it off the Citadel," Zorath called, as Mara turned to leave. "You've sacrificed your life for this moment of triumph." She paused, looking back at him one last time. "Some prices are worth paying, Elder. As you're about to learn." Vanguard Omega withdrew in precise formation, covering their retreat with sporadic fire at pursuing security forces. The corridors that had been empty during their infiltration now teemed with panicked officials and guards attempting to organize resistance. "Eastern sector compromised," Trent reported through static-laden comms. "Coalition forces have sealed off our primary escape route." Mara's mind raced through alternatives. "Secondary route through the diplomatic wing. Move now." They fought their way through increasingly determined resistance. The element of surprise long gone. 2 of Vanguard Omega fell to coalition weapons. Corporal Hayes with a plasma bolt through his visor. Specialist Lee when a security barricade collapsed on their position. 5 minutes to detonation." Patel's voice was tight with strain. "Colonel, we need to move faster." They reached a junction where the diplomatic wing connected to the main structure. Ahead lay their extraction point. If they could reach it before coalition forces cut them off completely. "I'll hold this position," Lieutenant Saul announced suddenly, dropping to one knee and setting up her sniper position with practiced ease. "Buy you time to get clear." "Negative," Mara snapped. "We all go or none go." Saul's dark eyes met hers briefly. "With respect, Colonel, someone needs to ensure those charges detonate. I can cover your withdrawal and still make it out." She managed a tight smile. "I'm faster than I look." Before Mara could argue further, coalition forces appeared at the far end of the corridor. Saul's rifle cracked 3 times in rapid succession, dropping the lead soldiers. "Go," she urged. "Now!" Mara hesitated, then nodded sharply. 3 minutes, Lieutenant. Then you run, regardless of the situation. That's an order." "Understood, Colonel." The remaining members of Vanguard Omega continued their fighting withdrawal, each step bringing them closer to potential escape, and further from the heart of coalition power that would soon be reduced to rubble. "Colonel," Trent's voice came through suddenly. "There's something you need to know." Something in his tone made Mara's blood run cold. "Report, Captain." "I modified the evacuation broadcast. Gave them the full 15 minutes we originally discussed, not the 12 you ordered." Mara stopped in her tracks, disbelief warring with fury. "You did what?" "I couldn't be part of a massacre. Mara," Trent replied, his voice steady despite the betrayal. We've destroyed their seat of power. We've broken their illusion of invulnerability. That's enough. You've compromised the entire operation, she hissed. The Synod will survive. Maybe they should, he cut her off. Maybe someone needs to rebuild after all this destruction, even if it's them. An explosion rocked the corridor ahead, cutting off further argument. Coalition forces had breached their flank, threatening to trap them completely. Extraction point compromised, reported Sergeant Coda. We need another way out. Mara forced her personal feelings aside, focusing on the tactical situation. Maintenance bay 3 levels down. There's an auxiliary shuttle dock. They fought their way to a service elevator, descending into the industrial underbelly of the Citadel. Above them, the countdown continued, now barely 3 minutes until detonation. Lieutenant Sol, fall back immediately, Mara ordered into her comm. Repeat, fall back to the maintenance level. Static answered her. Nayara respond. Nothing. Engineer Patel checked her tactical display. Her position is overrun. Colonel, Coalition forces have secured that entire section. The knowledge settled like ice in Mara's stomach. Another loss. Another name to add to the tally of vengeance. They reached the maintenance bay with barely 2 minutes remaining. As promised, a shuttle dock connected to the exterior. Their last hope of escape before the Citadel became their tomb, as well as the Coalition's. 1 shuttle operational, reported Coda after a quick assessment. Capacity for 8. Mara did the math silently. They were 9. She opened her mouth to volunteer to stay behind when Captain Trent stepped forward. I'll hold them off, he said simply. Get the team clear. Their eyes met. 1,000 unspoken words passing between them. Betrayal. Yes, but also understanding. In changing the evacuation time, Trent had followed his conscience rather than her orders. She couldn't forgive that, but she understood it. That wasn't a request. Colonel, he added quietly, I've already locked the launch sequence to my authorization. You have 90 seconds to board and clear the docking clamps. Mara's jaw tightened. Elias! Go, he said, more gently now. Finish what we started. But remember what we were fighting for in the beginning, a future where humans could live without fear. Don't let vengeance consume that future. A distant explosion signaled the approach of Coalition forces. Trent turned away, weapon raised, positioning himself at the entry point. Board the shuttle, Mara ordered the remaining team members. Her voice, rough with emotion she refused to show. Immediate departure. The shuttle's engines hummed to life as they strapped in. Through the viewport, Mara watched Trent engage the first wave of Coalition security forces, his tall frame silhouetted against the firefight, buying them precious seconds with his life. 30 seconds to detonation, Patel announced tensely. The shuttle broke free of the docking clamps, accelerating away from the Citadel with reckless speed. Behind them, the crystalline structure still glittered in the light of the gas giant below. Beautiful, arrogant, and doomed. The explosion, when it came, was strangely silent in the vacuum of space. A brilliant flash at the Citadel's heart. Then a shockwave of destruction radiating outward. Spires collapsed in elegant slow motion. Whole sections sheared away, tumbling into the atmosphere below. The seat of Coalition power, untouchable for millennia, crumbled before their eyes. In the shuttle's cramped cabin, no one spoke. Victory tasted like ash in their mouths, mingled with the knowledge of those left behind. Sol, Trent, the others lost in the mission. The price of vengeance. Mara watched through the viewport as the Citadel's remaining structures began to fall into Azuria's churning atmosphere, trailing fire like tears across the sky. Set course for the rendezvous point, she ordered quietly, and broadcast on all frequencies. Operation Retribution is complete. The aftermath spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. Without the Synod's centralized authority, the Coalition began to fracture almost immediately. Member worlds that had chafed under their rule for centuries declared independence. Vassal species rose in rebellion. The carefully maintained order of millennia unraveled in weeks. On Titan, Mara stood before the assembled governors of the human colonies, representatives from Mars, Callisto, Europa, and a dozen smaller outposts. Earth's delegation sat apart, their expressions guarded. The chamber was tense with unspoken questions about what would follow victory. The Coalition fleet has withdrawn from all human claim systems, Mara reported, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. Their military command structure is in disarray without direction from the Synod. And the Synod itself? Asked Governor Chen of Europa, leaning forward. 6 confirmed dead in the Citadel destruction, Mara replied. Prime Elder Zorath among them. The remaining 3 are in hiding, their whereabouts unknown. A murmur ran through the assembly, relief mingled with something darker. The Coalition of 9, which had dominated galactic politics for thousands of years, had been decapitated in a single strike. What happens now? This from Governor Ishida of Mars, her face bearing the strain of months overseeing the reconstruction of shattered colonies. We've achieved our immediate objective. The Coalition no longer threatens our worlds, but the power vacuum we've created is spreading chaos throughout the sector. Mara had anticipated this question. Vanguard Unit Omega has been reconfigured into multiple strike teams. They're currently deployed to secure key transit points and communication relays. Any aggression against human settlements will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. In other words, said Earth's representative coolly, we've replaced Coalition control with our own. With security, Mara corrected. Not control. We're not seeking to govern other species, only to ensure they can't threaten us again. A distinction without a difference to those on the receiving end, the representative countered. Reports from the Neutral Accord indicate growing fear of human expansion. They're calling us the new Coalition. The words struck Mara like a physical blow, though she kept her expression neutral. Was this what they had become? What she had led them to become? The security measures are temporary, she insisted, until stable diplomatic relations can be established with whatever governments emerge from the Coalition's collapse. Governor Ishida shook her head slowly. Peace through strength. Isn't that exactly what the Coalition claimed? How are we different? The question hung in the air, unanswerable, because Mara knew, in her heart, that they weren't different, not anymore. The tactics she had employed, the decisions she had made, had transformed humanity into what they had once feared. We didn't start this, she said finally. We didn't strike first. Everything we've done has been in response to Coalition aggression. True, acknowledged Ishida. But where does it end? When do we stop being defined by their actions and start being defined by our own? Before Mara could respond, her comm unit chimed with an urgent alert. She checked it, frowning. Excuse me, governors. There's a situation requiring my attention. She left the chamber, relief mingling with concern at the interruption. In the corridor outside, her aide waited with a troubled expression. What is it? Mara demanded. A transmission, Colonel, from the Neutral Accord. Ambassador Cryas is requesting direct communication. Mara nodded. Put it through to my private channel. Moments later, the familiar features of the ambassador appeared on her comm screen. His skin pulsed a troubled amber. Colonel Voss, he began without preamble. I'm contacting you on a matter of utmost urgency. Coalition remnant forces have seized control of the Proxima research station. They're holding the scientific staff hostage and threatening to destroy the facility unless human forces withdraw from 3 key systems. Mara's blood ran cold. The Proxima station housed over 2,000 researchers from a dozen species, including nearly 300 humans. Send me the details, she ordered. I'll dispatch Vanguard teams immediately. There's more, Cryas continued. The Coalition commander claims to be acting on direct orders from surviving Synod members. They're calling it Operation Reciprocity. The implication was clear: an eye for an eye. Just as humans had struck at the Coalition's heart, now they would strike at humanity's future. The cycle of vengeance continuing, unbroken. "I'll handle it personally," Mara said, her mind already racing through tactical options. "Colonel," Krios's voice softened, "this path has no end. Surely you see that now. For every strike, a counterstrike. For every death, more deaths in retribution." Mara closed her eyes briefly. "What would you have me do, Ambassador? Surrender? Allow them to murder more innocents?" "Find another way," he urged. "Break the cycle. You destroyed their seat of power. You've proven humanity cannot be subjugated. Now prove you can be more than just the Coalition's replacement." His skin shifted to a deep blue of sincerity. "Prove Elias Trent didn't die in vain." The mention of Trent's name pierced Mara's carefully maintained armor. In her mind's eye, she saw him again, standing alone against overwhelming odds, sacrificing himself not just for his team, but for his principles. "I'll consider your words," she said finally. "But first, I have hostages to save." The transmission ended. Mara stood motionless in the corridor for a long moment, the weight of command, of choice, heavy on her shoulders. Then she straightened. Decision made. "Prepare my shuttle," she ordered her aide, "and contact the remains of the Coalition fleet. Tell them Colonel Mara Voss wishes to speak directly with whoever leads them now." "What message should I convey?" the aide asked, puzzled. Mara's expression was unreadable. "Tell them I'm coming to negotiate. Personally. No troops. No weapons. Just words." The aide's eyes widened in alarm. "Colonel, after what happened at the Citadel, they'll kill you on sight." "Maybe," Mara acknowledged. "Or maybe they'll listen. Either way, the cycle has to end somewhere." She turned away, her voice dropping almost to a whisper. "And I'm tired of counting the dead." 3 days later, Mara stood alone amid the ruins of the Cerulean Citadel. The Coalition had agreed to her request for a neutral meeting ground. And what place could be more symbolic than the shattered heart of their former power? Emergency force fields contained an atmosphere within what had once been the Grand Hall. Now it was open to space on one side, the gas giant Azuria visible through the breach, its swirling storms a fitting backdrop to the devastation. Mara wore no armor, carried no weapons. Her uniform was standard issue, bearing only her rank insignia. She had come as she promised, alone and unarmed, offering words instead of violence. She heard them before she saw them, the sound of boots on crystal shards. 3 figures emerged from the shadows of a collapsed archway. Coalition military uniforms, crisp despite the surroundings. At their center walked a figure Mara recognized immediately, though she had never expected to see him alive again. Synod member Kelris, the youngest of the 9, had survived the destruction. "Colonel Voss," he greeted her, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the emergency lighting in kaleidoscopic patterns. "I confess, I doubted you would actually come." "I gave my word," she replied simply. "Yes." His mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Just as you gave your word to uphold the Jupiter Accords, before you destroyed our seat of government." Mara didn't flinch from the accusation. "The Coalition broke faith first, but I didn't come to assign blame. I came to end this, before more innocents die on both sides." Kelris gestured around at the ruins. "You have a curious definition of ending things, Colonel." "This was never about destroying the Coalition itself," Mara said carefully. "Only about ensuring humans could live without fear of annihilation. You attacked Mars without warning or declaration. You murdered thousands of civilians, including my family. We responded to show you that humans cannot be intimidated or controlled." "And now," Kelris asked, his alien features unreadable, "with the Synod scattered and our authority in tatters, what do humans want now?" Mara took a deep breath. This was the moment everything hinged upon. The future, not just of humanity, but of 1,000 species across the galaxy. Peace, she said simply. Real peace. Not domination disguised as benevolence. Not security through fear. Actual coexistence, with genuine respect for sovereignty and self-determination. Kelrus studied her for a long moment. And the human strike forces currently occupying our former territories? The military presence at every major transit point? Will withdraw, Mara promised. As soon as we have guarantees that coalition remnants will cease all hostilities against human worlds. You trust us to honor such guarantees? Kelrus sounded genuinely curious. After everything that has happened. Mara shook her head slightly. Trust is earned, not given. But someone has to take the first step towards something better than endless retribution. She met his alien gaze steadily. I'm taking that step now. The question is whether you're willing to join me. The remaining Synod members may not agree, Kelrus warned. Some call for total war against humanity, regardless of the cost. And what do you call for, Synod member Kelrus? The question seemed to surprise him. He turned slightly, gazing out at the gas giant visible through the breach in the hall. I was the youngest of the 9, he said quietly. Appointed only 30 years ago, after my predecessor died. I always questioned our approach to emerging species, our assumption that control was necessary for stability. He turned back to Mara. Perhaps it is time for a different way. Hope flickered within her for the first time in months. Then let's begin. The hostages at Proxima Station will be released immediately, Kelrus assured her. That operation was never authorized by the remaining Synod. It was the action of a commander acting on his own initiative. Just as the attack on Mars was unauthorized? Mara couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Kelrus's mandibles clicked softly. No, as you've surely deduced, Prime Elder Zorath ordered that attack personally. He feared your brother's research could give humanity an advantage we couldn't counter. The confirmation reopened old wounds, but Mara pushed through the pain. Then let's acknowledge the truth, all of it, and move forward from there. No more convenient fictions about rogue elements or unauthorized strikes. Transparency, Kelrus mused. A novel approach to galactic politics. Maybe that's what we all need, Mara suggested. The coalition ruled through mystery and fear. Perhaps its successor can rule through openness and cooperation. Its successor, Kelrus repeated, his tone sharpening. You speak of a new coalition? Mara shook her head. I speak of whatever comes next. Something that isn't the coalition of 9, but also isn't human dominance. Something genuinely new. She gestured to the ruins around them. We've broken the old order. Now we have a chance to build something better in its place. For a long moment, silence reigned in the shattered hall. Then Kelrus extended a 4-fingered hand, the formal gesture of a Synod member offering accord. I cannot speak for all who remain of the former coalition, he said carefully. But I am willing to begin this conversation, to see if there is indeed a better way forward than the cycle of fear and vengeance we have perpetuated. Mara hesitated only briefly before taking his hand, the first step on an uncertain path. Then let's talk, she said simply. About Proxima Station, about Mars, about everything that brought us here, and where we go from this moment. As they moved to a more intact section of the hall to begin negotiations, Mara felt the weight of absence. All those who should have been there but weren't. Samuel and his family, Captain Trent, Lieutenant Saul, countless others on both sides, sacrificed to the altar of retribution. She couldn't bring them back. But perhaps, in their memory, she could build something worthy of their sacrifice. Not a peace enforced through fear, but a future shaped by something stronger. The shared determination never again to let vengeance rule in place of justice. Behind them, Through the shattered walls of the citadel, the storms of Azuria continued their eternal dance. Destruction and creation intertwined, as they always had been, as they always would be, a fitting witness to this fragile beginning.